You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Posture Screen, Imaging Services, Zinget Solutions, Chiro Moguls, 5-Star Management, Chiro Health USA, Local Gold, Rhino Coaching, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Thin, Peter Goldman Zone School of Healing, Go Get Talks, Fit to Lift, The Goodman Factor, Unmarket Your Practice, and McCaffrey Clinical Mentoring. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 129 of CHP. I'm Luke, this is Jim.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Damien Ciasullo, and if you want to know more about non-therapeutic chiropractic and the membership model, stay tuned. All right, so this is episode 129 of the Chiro Hustle podcast, and today we have Dr. Damien Ciasullo. He is coming in from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it's such an honor to have you on the show today. And I know that you're going to drop a lot of gold nuggets for people and knowledge based on your chiropractic career and where you see this profession going. So as we jump into this episode with you, why don't you share with us about your chiropractic story and what influenced you to become a chiropractor?
It's a pretty good story. It starts in the mid-'70s. My oldest brother, so I have a mixed family. There's 3 biological kids. My parents adopted a couple kids off the mean streets of Philly, and then they took in refugees from all over the world. So wherever there was political drama, that's who would show up and live at my house. And you would just come home from school one day and you'd have a new brother or sister. And so I was not born at this time, but my oldest brother hurt himself wrestling for his school. And he began a downward slide, and he ended up, after a couple months of getting worse and worse and worse, to being unable to walk. And he found himself in a hospital in Center City, Philly, and he was there laid out, and sure enough, they were proposing to do a spinal fusion surgery to his low back. And they said it was unstable, and that's the best, way out of this. And so my dad didn't want to do that. My brother was a teenager. And so he started asking around, and telling the story at where he worked. And he worked in a school district. And all the teachers started telling him, why don't you go to a chiropractor, give that a shot. And my dad didn't know anything about it. So he went to the surgeon and he asked him, he said, what do you know about chiropractic? And it was really cool because in the mid-'70s, this orthopedic surgeon said to my dad, I don't know anything personally about chiropractors, but my wife goes to one and she loves it. Why don't you give it a shot? And if it doesn't work, we'll do the surgery later, which for the mid-'70s was super progressive, I thought. And so my dad literally checked my brother out of the hospital, laid him in the back of his station wagon, and drove directly 2 counties over to a chiropractor that someone recommended. And that guy saw my brother every day for about 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, my brother was walking around again. So my parents thought we have discovered the greatest cure for back pain ever. And it was this wonderful thing. And he was telling everyone, shouting it from the rooftops, and they were in the paper and newspaper telling the story and all this stuff. So my dad was a chiropractic advocate early on, and they had found this great low back pain cure. And I was born within a year from that, and I was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. So I was being choked. My whole head was purple when I came out. And that day, the doctor, the obstetrician probably saved me. He patted me on the butt, got me crying, unraveled my neck, and I never stopped crying. I was a miserable little mess. And at that point, I was my parents' 6th kid, and I was the worst one of them all. I never shut up. And so they found, my mom knew something was wrong. They brought me to a pediatrician who said I had colic. And then they brought me to another pediatrician who said I had ear infections. And while some of those might have been true, my mom, her motherly intuition said that something doesn't seem right. So we're going to bring him to a chiropractor again. There was something to that last time. And she brought me to the chiropractor, and he found one subluxation in my spine. It was right here at C1. You've probably heard this story a million times. And the chiropractor, exactly, you got the t-shirt to prove it. And the chiropractor went knit, knit, knit on my neck. And I was like a brand new kid. And the interim little piece there is he told them a different story. He didn't tell them the back pain story. He told them, the first thing he said to them was, well, I don't treat colicky babies and I can't cure ear infections, but let's see if your child has a subluxation. Let's explain what that is. And he adjusted me. And that changed my life. But then he also explained to my parents, he said, look at all these kids. How do we know if they have any subluxations? Look at you. What about you? And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse, like The Godfather. And he said, he's a hippie dude. He said, I have a wooden box on my wall there, and I want to see you and all these kids in here every week. And I want you to put the most that you can afford in that box every week. And I don't want you to stop till one of us dies. And my parents were like, man, that's they're hippies too. There was an offer they couldn't refuse. It made perfect sense. He explained to them the logic. And so I grew up, I went to the chiropractor every week for my whole life. And I also went to a pediatrician, and I realized, when I'd go to the pediatrician, the walls were gray. There was some old battle axe sitting behind the counter, like sliding the glass and taking your insurance card. And when I go to the chiropractor, it was a party. Everybody was happy to be there, and enjoying life and enjoying, kids were there and adults were there, and you saw same people every week. It was like a family. And so that was part of my family's healthcare, and we grew up that way. So when it was time to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just doing an event in Chicago over the past weekend, and I saw this little boy, and he was over there looking at the somatic chart that we had out there. And I go, so what are you going to be when you grow up? He goes, I think I'm going to be a chiropractor. And he's like, no, I'm going to be a fireman. So he almost got it right.
Yeah, right. Well, you never know. Still a seed was planted that day,
Because he was looking at like the generation model, and he's like, what is that thing? I go, oh, that's your nerve. He goes, what does that do? And I go, okay, come look at this. So that one controls here, and this one controls here. He goes, Mom, that thing controls your heart.
That's awesome, man. You're doing good work out there doing, I call it like guerrilla warfare on the street, explaining to people what it is, man, because it's a story that needs to be told. None of us would be here if someone didn't take the time out of their day to tell them the story,
It'll toughen a guy up to go out there. I know this isn't about me, but at the height of what I was doing, I did 600 screen events in 2.5 years. So it becomes pretty easy, but I can't just imagine the amount of lives that we save with frontline workers like that, going out there and basically being the apologist, the politician, the advocate, and actually growing the profession on a street level, and then sending them into offices across the country to where they can get better, which is, it's a huge honor for me to be able to do that work. But let's turn the chapter back to you now. Talk to us a little bit about what makes you unique in this chiropractic space. I know you practice a non-therapeutic style practice like you grew up in with the membership model.
Yeah, I didn't always practice that way. When I wanted to, and then when I graduated school in 2001, I think fear took over, and just, all that stuff hits you at once, and you figure out really quickly that the only thing you're really trained to do is be a student. I'd gone to the 20th grade and had part-time jobs. And if I wasn't a chiropractor, probably the thing I was most qualified on paper to be was a janitor. And so I had, no life experience. So everything hits you at once. And out of fear, I locked up and I did what everybody else did. And I started a, insurance-based practice because I thought that's how you do it. And my story is, I'll give you another quick little anecdote. Maybe it won't be that quick, but it's important to me. So I was muddling along in this practice. I built my own practice. It was going for about 8 years. I was doing okay. I was cruising along. I would call it an industry standard practice. I probably saw about the industry standard visits. I probably made about the industry standard money, maybe sort of the low end of that, I would assume. But I was cruising along. And one day I'm not a vision person, but I literally had a dream. And my dream was my son was 4. He's 11 now, but he was 4 at the time. And he came to me one day and said he wanted to be a chiropractor. And so I said, come on, son. And we're going to talk about this. And in my dream, he was a teenager at the time, getting ready to go to college. And I said, let's come to the office. And he hung out with me on a Saturday, and it was jumping and everything was good. And like, he was wide eyed, and this is what I'm going to do with my life. And after the shift ended, I locked the door. I turned off the lights. And he said, all right, what are we going to do next, Dad? Let's go have a fun Saturday. And I said, no, Dad has to go pay the bills. And so I sat there and I turned the lights off, and I sat there and I started all those little kids I was seeing. I started writing diagnosis codes on paper, and I started doing notes so that I could answer to the insurance company if they had a question. And I started dancing, you might call it, right? Doing the dance. And I looked over at my son, and the look in his face, like the wide-eyed thing, went away, and his eyes narrowed down, and he was like, this isn't right. This is something totally different. You know, my dad isn't who he said he was. He said it's all about life and health and vibrancy. And here he is writing, you know, all these codes to send to some company so they would they pay them. And that's like a weird thing. And it didn't jive. And it didn't jive with him in the dream because it wasn't jiving with me in my heart. And so from there, I pivoted and I said, I'm not going to do this. I have to find another way. And my questions to the universe were answered by these guys who were doing membership stuff and these box on the wall guys and all these, guys who weren't playing the game. They were doing it the way they wanted to. And they were seeing people the same way they saw their family every week and under that same context, very congruent. And I said, man, that speaks to me. That makes sense. And I was driven to it by the simplicity. I said, and I made a list of all the things I found annoying about my practice. The phone ringing, people changing their appointments, dealing with insurance companies, leaving my back room when I'm working with someone. I come out and my office staff's on Facebook, and all these like annoying things. And I said, I'm just going to clip these one at a time. And I said, who is my ideal person to work with? I said, my ideal person to work with is that person who comes in every week. They love this thing. They come in to get adjusted. They bring their family. They reach into their pocket, their own pocket, no, not a third party's. They reach into their own pocket and they pay me a fee either when they come in or by the month. And they love them. They love me and I love them. And I said, what if I just built the concept of a whole practice like that? What if I just built a tribe of people who said, I just love chiropractic. I like to go to my chiropractor every week. And I found these folks, and I didn't invent the idea. I copied off other people, and they gave me everything I have for free. They never asked a dime from me other than to pass the word along, help someone else. And so that's what I've been doing. And so my niche is to give chiropractic to people the way I have received it in my life and not be hypocritical and do something else and offer that's my gift to the world. And I'm big on saying, like, I don't, and we'll get into this probably a little later too, but I don't think there's one way to practice. I'm not here to tell anyone how to practice. I'm just here to tell you how I do it. And you get to do it how you want. And this is how I do it. And we're all good.
So similar to us, you also run a podcast, right?
Yeah. So I just started that. And that's just an extension of this idea of how do we get the word out? Yeah, so I did that just a way to explain what we do. And so chiropractors are weirdos by nature. We're all contrarian, but the group I run with are almost the weirdos of the weirdos. We're like this niche of like, we just want 100% wellness practice. And so of all people who just want to get adjusted every week and come in a non-therapeutic manner. So that needs to be explained to people. And the best example of our style of practice would be Reggie Gold. If you're familiar with Reggie Gold, this is the style of practice that he advocated.
Well, early on when I was getting like more influence into the chiropractic world, I found this guy at Mile High #1 out in Colorado named Patrick Smith. And Patrick Smith taught me the membership model. And actually, I fell in love with it because of the simplicity. And I fell in love with it because it just made sense. And everything that he told me, he's like, yeah, why would I take care of my patients any different than I'd take care of my family or my friends? He goes, when we come into my old office in Chicago, we'd pass by everything else in the office. We'd go lay down on the bench face down. We'd adjust each other, and then we'd go get lunch. He goes, we didn't do anything else but get checked and adjust. He goes, and that's really what I wanted to do for a practice. So now he runs Chiropractic, which is a membership model practice in Denver. And I still love the model. I love the simplicity of it. And I love that chiropractors are delivering chiropractic for the sake of what they want. And I think it's brilliant that, we can take an idea and put it into action and create a movement around it. And, me being a part of your guys' membership site, I get a chance to see all the wins from guys just like you talking about how it changed their life to practice in harmony with what they want to do for being a chiropractor. And the next question is for us is, do you have any mantras or quotes that keep you motivated with your consistency as a chiropractor?
Yeah, there's a quote do you know the Teddy Roosevelt quote? I don't know what it's actually called. I call it it's not the critic who counts. Do you know that quote?
No.
All right, I'll read it for you real quick. It's something that I had it since I was in college. My dad gave it to me once when I was at a time in my life when I was particularly giving a crap about what some non-entity said in my life. But this is from Teddy Roosevelt. It says, it's a little long, but it's great. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who either know no victory or nor defeat. And so it's just that idea of like, be a doer, go get it, go after it. And, when you extend yourself like this, making a podcast, all of a sudden you extend yourself to the people who like you, and you extend yourself and open yourself to the turds out there who are sitting in their, the do nothing turds. And social media, as we all know, gives them an equal voice. So there's the people out there like you guys who are doing great things. And there's the people out there who are doing nothing, and they get a platform too. And so I've recently thought about this quote a lot because, when you put yourself out there, it's good and bad.
Well, Dr. Damien, what I realize is people are afraid of doers, and they're easy to be attacked because we're constantly on the move and people are constantly shooting arrows at us, man. So what I've seen is the more that we just keep on staying consistent, they go away. And one of my favorite things to do in social media is block and delete. And I call them keyboard cowboys. And the reason that they have time to mess with us is because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's the trouble with the doer. And I think that Nike really nailed it when they said, just do it. And I think that the doer is the person that gets the momentum started. And really, we are trailblazing, because as I've realized when I got into the chiropractic space, one of the sore spots on the profession was being understood. And all chiropractors are like, well, we have to educate them. Well, back in the day when you got into chiropractic care, your chiropractor thought it was important to understand what a subluxation is. And when I got into chiropractic care at 16 years old, what I understood is I just wanted to feel better and perform better as an athlete. I could care a rip what the big terminologies were. So what we do need to do is continuously develop good content that educates the public, whether it's you doing it, Luke and I doing it, or the people that we teach how to do podcasts do it. But right now, it is a vehicle for us to disseminate information to the mass amount of people out there that are looking for information on chiropractic.
Yeah. So are you is your stance the latter, like the I don't give a rip, let's just explain how people can perform better, that idea?
No, as I've matured more, I realize that it's important to understand the educational resource amongst the tribe of chiropractors, but we have to change the languaging for the end user. And we have to understand that the end user doesn't understand, they have a hard time assimilating doctor talk. So we should educate them, but we should also let them know that, like you said earlier, that this is a system that we want to see you from cradle to grave. Once a week or bi-weekly or once a month frequency for the rest of your life. It's not about your pain or headaches or neck pain or whatever it might be. It's about your human performance and your vitality and your ability to have a child, carry a child to term, develop into the top level athlete that you can become. I think there's so many things that are about performance. And I think that that's where chiropractic has to go, is educating people on the performance of the stay-at-home mom needs it, to the guy that sits at the desk jockey that sits at a desk for 40 hours to 60 hours to 80 hours a week.
Yeah, Reggie would talk about that all the time. Reggie would say, like, imagine a realtor who's able to have a little more energy and a little more enthusiasm for their job, and it translates to them selling one more house a month. What does 5% more liver function look like? That's kind of hard to tell, but so some of what we say is very in your face and it's easy to measure, and then some of it's a little more maybe esoteric, but it all counts, and it all touch people in different ways.
So how do you think the world would change if everyone got under consistent chiropractic care?
It's a good question. There's a friend of mine who says, he wants I like how he says it. His name's Mark Romano. And he says, I want, when someone moves to a new town, I want one of the questions when they're meeting their neighbors to ask, who's your chiropractor? Like, who do you go to? Who's the go-to person in town, And in my part of town, like, I probably fill that need pretty well. But I like that idea. I just think that, I don't know about the whole, like, change the world, everything, but I just think it's a necessary thing. It's just one of those things, like, it should be a part of everyone's life. And so I'd just like to see it at that point. I think every chiropractor gets, when I get a new person who comes in and you say, have you been to a chiropractor before? A lot of times they're listing several chiropractors. So I think a lot of time, a lot of the folks I see now, that might be self-selective. They might just be people who like chiropractors. I get that. But I think a lot of times they're going into offices and the office is not making it accessible for them to stay there. They're getting some short-term thing. Either chiropractic is a success or failure for them, right? Based on some symptomatic change or non-symptomatic change. But either way, the person leaves. And so then they're just on this revolving door of crisis management. So that's one of the things I try to do is make this thing accessible. So this person says, oh man, this is a great landing place. I can stay here and this is easy to access. It's simple to afford. I know how to engage in this thing and I'm going to stay here. This is perfect. It's what I was looking for.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Posture Screen, Imaging Services, Zinget Solutions, Chiro Moguls, 5-Star Management, Chiro Health USA, Local Gold, Rhino Coaching, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Thin, Peter Goldman Zone School of Healing, Go Get Talks, Fit to Lift, The Goodman Factor, Unmarket Your Practice, and McCaffrey Clinical Mentoring. Let's hustle.
Yeah, you saying that makes a lot of sense because I know that chiropractic is a business, number one, but it's a healing art before that. And I think a lot of times when people consider chiropractic as the business model, they sell the care plan, they get people under for so long. And then what happens? They try to re-sign them onto another like maintenance style package, which I get it, it's business. But really what it does is it doesn't serve the end user, which is the person that came to you in the first place. It doesn't build consistent lifelong care, which I'm not a DC, so I'm not going to tell anybody how to run their business. But I love the idea that you bring to the table of saying, hey, you've been to 7. Now this is the last place you'll come to because I'm going to take care of you and your family from now to the time where I either blow up and go away or you do the same.
Right. And let's get rid of the sticky parts. Like there's, chiropractic's a cool thing. And there's some parts about it that I'm sure you don't like as the consumer. And there's some parts about that I don't like. And I'm trying my best to eliminate all those things to make it easily accessible to you.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant model. I've thought it since day one because a lot of times people are very confused. They think health insurance is actual health care. Right. And they think that chiropractors do something to get them out of a mess rather than give them better quality of life. And there's a huge confusion when it comes to a chiropractor. Like you said, when you got right out of school, what did you do? Well, you ran for the hills and did what everybody else was doing because you're like, I have to keep the lights on.
Right. And I think it's a maturity level thing. I always look back and I'll say, man, what if I did this from the start? How much easier? Because, I realized very early on, there are practices in chiropractic that are very good at getting new people. And there are practices in chiropractic that are very good at keeping people. And so much of the focus, at least when I was growing up in chiropractic as a young chiropractor, so much of the focus with coaching groups or whatever, were all about getting new people. And then I met mentors who said, like, I get one new person a week, 2 new people a week. I have so many here. I couldn't handle 10 new people a week because like I'm right where I need to, right where I want to be, you know? And I said, man, that's great. Like now I'm 43. I don't want to be in my 40s and 50s and 60s having to still get new people. You have to have mechanisms in place to keep those people. You know, you're not serving them really, in my opinion, you know?
So where do you see chiropractic heading in the next 20 years?
That's a great question too. I don't know, you know, like if I look back, so I have 18 years of practical experience to look back on now. And I think some of the issues that we're having today are the same issues we were having, you know, when I first came out. It's the same conversations and they ebb and flow, and certain things will get hot and we're being challenged in this corner, and then it goes away for a little while, and then this other fire pops up. So my answer to that question is this: I don't know where it's going to go. All I know is I'm going to try really hard, my hardest, to make sure that my style of practice has a seat at the table. I always want a seat at the table for someone who wants to have this, do it this way, to be able to do it. And if that's the thing that I accomplish at the end of my career, that, hey man, if you want to do it this way, there's people out there to learn from and do it, I'm all good with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think that the profession is only going to get stronger, but we have to, like we were discussing a little bit ago, we have to stay true to the languaging, and that's not for the public, that's for the profession. And if we start letting the languaging of the profession get taken away because of other powers that be, then chiropractic loses its firepower. And that's a big fire, if you ask me, if they start removing the languaging like subluxation and innate intelligence from the profession. So what we do with Hustle is we aim to protect the free speech of chiropractic for the chiropractor, to make sure that nobody can buy or sell the language of the profession.
Yeah, I realize my selfishness of chiropractic, like there are lines that I have drawn for the sanity of my life. And my selfishness of chiropractic is, and I loathe politics, man. I just hate politics. I hate politicians, but I realize they're a necessary entity. And I realize there are, that leaves the door open to advocacy groups like you guys. You have to be there. And so that's why I love what you guys are doing, because I don't have the strength or energy to do it all the time. Like if the need arises and shit gets heavy, I'll be right there. But when it's low, I got to do my thing and live my life. And that's where you guys come in. So you're doing a invaluable service to the community.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I know that what we do is it's a place-holding situation, that we know that the episodes get out there to the masses, and that's important. And that's why we really congratulate you too for starting your own podcast, because I think a lot of times people have a voice and it stays inside of them. And I made a post yesterday. I said, start today, start now. Don't wait 6 months and wish you would have done it. If you need help with starting your podcast, reach out to me. So I think that it is important to have a whole legion of people sharing the chiropractic truth to their corner of the world, whether it's, and then the guy's like, so how do I get new patients from it? Well, the chiropractic profession gets new patients from it, and it's not self-serving. People only want to create stuff if it serves them. And I think that it's important to have a self-serving aspect to it, but we have to create the information because we need to blitz the marketplace while this is still free, low cost entry, and it can be disseminated at such a high pace.
Yes, I wish I started one sooner. And I also wish I was more tech savvy and probably had met, someone like you a couple years ago who was more tech savvy, who could show me this way. I'm like, I should have been kicked out of Generation X a long time ago. I'm terrible. So, the guys like you who can make like this nice slick product is pretty awesome.
Well, I'll tell you, dude, like when I first got into this, I was rubbing 2 nickels together and I was afraid. I was afraid to do my first video. I was afraid to create a logo. I was afraid to ask the first person as a guest. I was afraid to what platforms do we push it out to. I was afraid of everything. So anybody that's out there listening to this, I mean, we've done so many interviews over the past couple of years, but when we first started out, we had two nickels to rub together. We were living in a 700 square foot apartment in Denver, and Luke lived in the living room. I had a bedroom, and we upstarted this and bootstrapped without any type of idea. I was afraid to give ourselves a name of the podcast. Like when I first started out, we were going to be called the Chiropreneur. And then a couple chiropractors out there attacked me. Some digital bullies told me that somebody else had already taken that name, that I had to get off the turf. So I went and smoked a little weed, and I went and walked around the park, and I went and titled our podcast Chiro Hustle, because at that point I was out there selling chiropractic visits at different marketing events. And I'm like, dude, all I do is hustle chiropractic. And I was listening to this podcast by Joe Polish and Dean Jackson called I Love Marketing. And they're like, you have to get niche specific. You have to tell people who you are, and you have to live it. So that's why I went and walked around the park that day, and I texted Luke first thing. I said, we're going to call it Chiro Hustle, and screw those bullies. Screw those guys that told us that we took their name.
Yeah, that's great, man. Good for you. That's how you have to do it. And it's so funny how you just get numb. Like you get this great idea and you go to do it, and you just like press pause. Your mind presses pause. Like, I can't come up with a name. I can't and now, like it's all, that's all silly stuff. The important idea is to get it out there. But like right as you're about to take the step, your mind wants to press pause on you,
And here's the thing is, I'm happy that you started, but when I was talking to a guy yesterday, I said, don't tell me what the first episode looks like. Tell me what your 100th episode will look like. And that's how we win.
Yes, it's easy to, and that's the next level, right? Because in hindsight, it's easy to start. It's very hard to finish, right? So you have to, keep rolling. I think about that now too. I'm like, I think the Chiropractic Trust podcast is on like episode 9 or 10 I recorded this morning. And, I'm like, oh man, I'm just starting, it feels like I've been doing it forever, but I'm just starting,
Yeah. And our goal is to race to 1,000 episodes as fast as we can now. So
that's awesome.
I think that people do have to pay, themselves the ability to know that there is a threshold, but you have to know that you have to be in it for the long game, because that's when you start to actually see where the puck is going. You build the relationships within this profession. You understand the temperature of the, what's happening behind the scenes. And that's why I think what we're doing is so effective, because we do talk to hundreds upon hundreds of chiropractors. I talk to at least one chiropractor a day. So when we think about the cultural conversation, that's why Hustle is so strong, is because we pay attention to everybody in the marketplace.
When I first met, the real treasure of these things is they last forever, right? When I first met, I tell everyone this, when I met Reggie Gold and first heard him speak as a chiropractor, as a student, it's all fluff. Everything's wonderful, right? When I heard him speak with the pressure of going back to my office and all that, I always say, like, I met those guys, Joe D'Onofrio in New Jersey. The light was too bright. I was not ready to hear it yet. I heard the story and it sounded good. I just wasn't ready to do it. But when I was ready to hear, when my mind came around to the idea and it was my time, all of that stuff was still there, and those recordings were there, and those guys were still there, and they were still saying the same thing. And it was whatever it was, 8 years later, but I came back to them and they told me all the same stuff, and I was ready to hear it then,
So tell us about some of your favorite marketing strategies. How do you promote your business or your podcasts? What's your favorite way to promote stuff?
So this is not my area of expertise. I'm going to give you one thing that was given to me. So to promote my practice and promote myself, these days I do next to nothing, very, very little. I'm lucky. I'm at a place where I've been there 14 years. I get enough referrals that people come, and I pride myself on trying to get people to stay and, to understanding this idea, and they do. And then they tell their friends. The most valuable marketing thing I have ever done, bar none, is an in-office orientation to my people. I do it old school. I put put some clear like lacquer on the wall, so it looks like a wall, but I can write on it with markers, and so I get a little bit of a wow factor when I twice a week I stand up there and the people are sitting in chairs, and I literally just start drawing all over the wall like a madman and talking about chiropractic and how I do this thing, and they're staring, and I have their attention, and I just tell them the same story that my family was told in the 70s, and it turns one person into several. It turns one person to a family, and then they go tell their friends, and that was the greatest thing. And I thank Joe D'Onofrio in New Jersey for twisting my arm hard and making me do that, because every week it gets me out of my comfort zone. Every week it's something I don't feel like doing, but as soon as I'm done it, I'm totally energized. Probably like Jim, we were talking about you doing screenings and stuff, like it's up early in the morning, you're setting up and you're like, oh man, it might rain. I don't know if I want to be here. And then all of a sudden at the end of the day, like you're energized and you did that thing, and makes a big difference. So that is the best thing, a competent chiropractic orientation, to tell your people, tell the story to them.
Well, you know what, man? I still, after doing hundreds upon hundreds of them, I still get a little scared. I still get a little scared before I go out there the day before an event. I still get a little scared before I go to sleep the night before when I'm vision casting. So I get it, man. Even if you've done like 500 of those lectures to your office, it's still sometimes probably a little out of your comfort zone, because you're actually doing something that you should do, but it puts you on the edge to know that you have to be your best.
And I don't get a lot of new people in my office either. I'm not a new patient volume creator. So when I'm doing this talk, it's like my average is probably 2 people. So it's there. I put a couple chairs, you sit there, I stand here, and we're going to have a talk. But it's, and there are some folks these days who are coming up with slick ways to do orientation. I know a guy who's doing one in this format. He's doing like a online one. And I know some folks who are recording theirs. But for me, there's nothing like me swallowing my ego and putting myself out there and telling them, this is how I think, and this is what I feel is in your best interest, in your family's best interest, and not sell them, but just explain to them the logic of it all. That turned me on to it. The logic of it is why I'm a chiropractor today. It makes sense and it's simple. And so I explain it like that. And I release myself of their decision. And I tell them that, like, if you don't want to do this, I understand that. That's okay. But if you do want to do it, I'm here for you. And let's go. What do you think?
Well, I think it's awesome, and I want to see it. So please record it and send it to me.
All right. I stole it. And modified it for myself from my mentor, who I call Joe D. And he gives it out for free online. So if you want, I can give you the link to his, and it's for free out there. And that's he got his from Reggie Gold and made it his own. And he gives it freely to anyone who wants it. And I modified it and made it my own.
Yep. And I think Reggie started out and he called it the chemistry of life.
That was not his original one. That's something like, Reggie was an idea guy. So after a while, you're always coming up with new ways to explain everything. His original one was not not chemistry of life.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just know what I gravitated towards when I first started Googling Reggie Gold. I watched probably, I don't know how many hours of Reggie Gold videos. I don't know how many I forwarded it to Luke to like, watch this guy. Watch this video. Watch these 25 videos on Sigafus. Watch these videos on Sid Williams. Watch these old BJ Palmer adjusting videos. Like, I would just like go through YouTube and find every clip I could possibly on chiropractic, and I would just keep forwarding them to Luke.
Those guys could sit in a room. They had that special something. They could sit in a room and talk about tomatoes for an hour, and everyone would be riveted. I mean, they're slick.
So as we come to the edge of our conversation with you today, tell us some of your hobbies. What podcast do you listen to? And are there any books that you're in the middle of at the moment?
So every summer I'm not a voracious reader. I don't read enough. So every summer I try to just pick a fun book to read. So I'm reading my first ever John Grisham novel. It's called The Testament. That's kind of cool. I don't read enough. So it's just to get me, habitualized into reading a little more. I try to pick something fun, because whenever I gravitate, I'm always doing I listen to a lot of podcasts. For a while, I was a real podcast junkie, and I'm trying to back away from that. I feel like there's a saturation point you hit. And all of a sudden I'm very easily watered down, so all of a sudden I'm listening to these like real estate entrepreneur podcasts, and then I'm listening to like nutrition podcasts, and then that's what's in my brain. And so it starts coming out all the time. So I'm trying to cut back from that a little bit. But if I was going to give anyone a couple books to read, or some of the best reads I've ever had in chiropractic, I love the Joe Strauss Blue Books. If I need to get dialed in, I'll either listen to Reggie or read some Joe Strauss. And if someone's interested in maybe my style of practice or how we think about things, the best two are Blue Books by Strauss, Chiropractic Philosophy. It's very simple and awesome. And the other one is Practice Building for the Straight Chiropractor. That's phenomenal. The best chiropractic audio I've ever listened to, I don't know if you have these in your collection. The best chiropractic audio I've ever listened to is, and I checked Reggie Gold's website this morning, it's down. So I don't know if Irene took it down or what the story is with that. But Reggie Gold has 2 CD sets, and one is just on philosophy, and it's phenomenal. It's everything you want to know. And then the other one is basically like practice building. And some things might be a little dated, and people might do things a little differently now. But if you're looking to have that old school objective straight, or what we're calling now a non-therapeutic chiropractic office, where you just see people like I do, wellness people exclusively, those are the best audios you'll ever hear.
Awesome.
So what are some websites and resources you can give people to find out more about you or your practice or your podcast?
The Chiropractic Trust .com is the website, and you can link to the podcast from there. And it's just the Chiropractic Trust podcast. And we're on the, most of the major platforms. The Chiropractic Trust also does a free newsletter every month. It's an organization, it's a non-for-profit, just to give this movement a voice. And so the dues, I think, are, if you wanted to be a member, are like $35 a month, and they're just simply to help do some things, put on seminars here and there, and teach people how this style of practice can be pulled off. And then for me personally, my website is rhinochiro.com. You're welcome to see how I do things. You can find me on Facebook, Damien Ciasullo. And, I'll do Facebook here and there. Email rhinochiropractic@hotmail. I'm still one of the stragglers who have Hotmail accounts. And that's it. Any way you want to find me, catch me. You're always welcome to ask me questions or, go over anything you want. Awesome. And I will never charge you a dime. My pledge is, I realize people have to make a living, and my chiropractic office offers me that. But when someone asks me a question or thinks I have something important to say and they want me to say something, I will never charge someone for it, because I was not charged. I give back what I was given. So
awesome.
Well, we are at the end of this episode. Is there anything you wanted to talk about we did not ask you?
No, man, we hit it all. I think we did a good job.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for being on the show today.
And thanks for being our guest. It was great to get to know you. And when I'm out in Philly, I'll digitally give you a knock, and I'll see if you're around.
I am down with that, man. Anytime. I would love to meet you in person and hang out. And thanks for opening this window to me a little bit in the podcasting world, because like I said, I'm a newbie and I'm not super tech savvy, and this opens a whole new light for me. So thank you.
Yeah. And if you ever need anything, don't hesitate. The information is always free to you as well.
All right. Thank you, brother. Of course. Thanks.
All right. We'll see you on the next one.
We'll see you.
Thanks for having me, boys. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.